So I got to say what's up to family all over.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
how's yours?
It was good. It was quiet. It's just me and my husband, and we just chilled and watched movies. We watched Soul, really good movie.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
super good. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of our best purchases was Disney Plus, I think.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, we're watching like all the old like feature-length cartoons,
Uh huh.
and then like the new Pixar's are on there. So it's good.
Yeah, that's a good purchase. The cartoons are always high quality.
Yeah, and they're just like so chill and like drama-free, and it's like a nice escape,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. There was some interesting talk about Soul, and they were talking about how like the cartoons that had like black leads would often like start out black and then like turn into something different, like blue or like into an animal or
I've read
something
that.
like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was interesting.
It was, and I didn't know, like, I mean, I see the point of view. Like, I
Yeah.
definitely can see the point of view. I
Yeah.
don't know if this movie necessarily applied to that, you know. Even though like Tina Fey did become the black guy, which was bizarre, and he became the cat, it was still kind of like his story about how he, realized that there's so much more in life than just like that end goal, that final goal, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I took it as it's kind of like about representation, and like as a black person, or especially as a young black person, you don't really get to see yourself represented in film, and so even like when you have a character that's supposed to be black, they turn into like a blue symbol or something like that, So it's like something other than seeing yourself represented for most of the film.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, there's always like just like enjoying things, and then there's always like a deeper thing you can always like see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I hope you do get a chance to check out the movies we were talking about. One of them was Cry Freedom with Denzel Washington. I think that's like one of his earliest roles. It was really good. I was surprised that I hadn't really heard about it, or if I did, I hadn't heard much about it. But it was definitely a cool movie to watch. And then I was surprised at how good uh, Kevin Kline was in his role as well.
Kevin Kline's a great actor.
Yeah, yeah. I think I probably hadn't seen him in anything in a while, so I'd probably forgotten, or maybe just underestimated him, or not realized. What are like what's he like? What are his like big roles that he's known for?
Did you see Dave?
Dave sounds familiar.
Dave
What is
is
that from?
where he's a he like works in DC in like an employment office, but he looks exactly like the current president, and the current president has a stroke,
Oh, that
so
sounds
they
familiar.
hire him to play the president.
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I mean it's like a feel good idealized American
Hmm.
president movie,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
He was in A Fish Called Wanda that was
Oh,
good back in the
right.
80s.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess has he not really been in a lot recently? Has he?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, big '90s, '80s. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Hmm. I like your background.
Oh, thanks. That was a that was back. When was that? Probably like I want to say maybe 2 years ago or something when things were normal, and that was like a, summer rooftop in Brooklyn. A friend of
Nice.
mine was DJing. He's a He was a guy I hadn't seen for many years, and then like we reconnected through um, a picture that I ended up putting up on Instagram that he recognized himself in. He looked very different than the picture, so I was surprised that it was actually him.
Hmm.
And yeah, that was a good time. That was chill. It's a very chill time on the roof there. It's a nice building he lives in.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, how is everything in Brooklyn?
Um, I guess it's the same. Things are kind of quiet, and yeah, it's kind of the same. I almost missed the fireworks that were going on every day
I
for
know.
for a long time since like July 4th or before last year.
Yeah.
That was kind of some excitement that everyone in the country was going through together.
So bizarre. It was so
Yeah,
bizarre.
it was. I'm surprised that it finally ended because it felt like it was never going to end.
Right. And there was like conspiracies about like who was doing it and if it was a like police conspiracy or
Right, right.
there was like a bunch of theories about it.
Yeah, the conspiracies are weird because I hear things from people outside of New York City who like have been told it's some kind of like violent war zone or something here, and I'm just like, it's quiet and it's which that's the thing that's not normal is how quiet it is and the fact that no one's really around.
Yeah.
And then when I see other people's like boroughs or where other people live, to me that seems worse because I kind of think that I'm in a part of Brooklyn that's generally kind of more quiet. It's not really like the hustling and bustling. It's definitely not Flatbush. It's not even like Bushwick or Bed-Stuy or anything like that. But then when I see where other people live, it's just a shock for me to see that like level of deadness there
Yeah.
because it's just I only remember it as being a place where people are out and about.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of strange, but yeah, if you listen to the reports, I mean, who knows what people on the other side of the country are thinking is going on in New York right now. They're just they're just being fed like all types of stuff.
Mhm.
And the city is such that like if you're not really paying attention yourself to the news, you don't really know what's going on either unless you see it happening around you. So it's kind of
Right.
strange.
It is. It's so like segmented, you know. Like I'm
Yeah.
just in Mount Vernon. I'm, a mile away from the Bronx. I have
Yeah.
no idea what's going on in the city really,
Right.
you know. It's just so segmented.
Yeah.
I don't
Like,
even know what's happening here, like in Yonkers, even like the actual like
I can't hear you. I like lost sound from you. No, I can't hear you at all. Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, my internet connection's been really unstable. I have nothing but evil things to say about Spectrum.
Hmm. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good, good, good. Yeah. Yeah, so things are just been have been like really quiet, you
Yeah.
know. I was a little nervous, frankly, for inauguration day. I
Hmm.
really thought some shit was going to go down. I'm really glad it did not. Um yeah.
Yeah, I guess they kind of like blew it all days before, right? I guess they were only organized enough for that day, which I was hoping that would be the case, that they were disappointed that they didn't get off what they wanted to, but I didn't know. And the media
Yeah.
was certainly saying that they were preparing for more stuff happening. Um, which was good that they were prepared, because last year they had been talking about things happening around inauguration, and then everyone stopped talking about it, and then it was kind of like a surprise when this stuff happened. But it was like they had been talking it up for a while.
Yeah.
Um, so I just don't know what the level of intelligence was, or what their prepared level was, but it seemed very odd to see a capital be like less prepared than neighborhoods were where I was canvassing.
Yeah.
Like, I've had more police called on me for knocking on a door than were like defending our capital.
Yeah. I was surprised, frankly, that they just didn't shoot like the people who were actually like breaking the windows, scaling the
Mhm.
walls. Like, I'm honestly surprised they just didn't open fire on them. And
Yeah,
like, I mean, obviously, I understand that like that just speaks to, the issues that Black Lives Matters has been talking about forever.
right.
And, I'm not surprised by the number of military and law enforcement that they found at the rallies. But I am surprised
What were
that the
those
people
numbers like?
they were relatively high.
Mm,
Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but there were a lot of people. I think over 100 people have been arrested, and enough of those people have been either like military, law enforcement, there were firefighters. I
mm,
mean, it's just, and I was talking to my neighbor who's Black, she's Jamaican, and I was like, this is what Black people have been trying to tell us for 150 years, like literally
yeah,
150 years,
yeah,
is that law enforcement is just riddled with white supremacists.
right,
And here's the evidence, you
yeah.
know. And I'm interested in the police who actually committed suicide. There were two cops that committed suicide.
Mm,
And I'm just curious as to like what led them to that outcome. Like,
right.
was it their own implication? Were they afraid that they were going to get caught up in something deeper? Like, I'm just interested.
Yeah, that's that makes me wonder about the way that the police were opening up the barricades. Like, were they doing it because it was fellow police officers, or what?
Right. Like, and also my understanding is that Trump ordered the state police to not, or something like the Pentagon was ordered to not provide security. Like, he was definitely um part of the mayhem, you know.
Like, conspiracy wise, you mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because he actually, there was less law enforcement there than should have been.
Yeah,
Um and that was according to his orders, supposedly.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I was surprised that they were planning on killing people that day. You know,
I know. I can't imagine how terrifying that must have been for like AOC, Pelosi, even though I hate him, like Mike Pence,
yeah,
like they were calling their names. I mean, that's terrifying.
yeah,
Terrifying, you know. And that ridiculous congresswoman who refused to go through the metal detectors the day after, I mean, it's so ridiculous how some of the Republicans are reacting to it, you know?
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it's predictable, but ridiculous nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read an article that, the Republicans are in danger of breaking off into this like super like extremist faction. And
Hmm.
that, because of this, and I think it all started with the Tea Party,
Yeah,
right? Like, I mean, it started before that with like the moral majority and, like the silent majority and,
hmm,
like that whole, I don't know, like almost like cultish following.
right.
It started
Like
with
the
that.
religious right
Yes.
folks. Yeah,
Yeah. Like, I believe that that's a cult. I really do. And I believe that they've infiltrated the government, you know.
Yeah, I mean they definitely the the Trump following definitely has a lot of cult like it definitely has like a lot of cult like details.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
to the point where there's nothing that can like interrupt their following, or no amount of logic can change their mind.
Right. And it's scary how we got to this point, you know. So, I don't know. It does not make me it doesn't make me optimistic for the future, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
You know, I feel that like as long as there are supposedly mainstream people who are like upholding these conspiracy theories, and they're so bizarre. They're
Yeah.
so bizarre. Like alien laser beams starting the forest fires, like,
Right.
or the aliens can be Jewish. I mean, like, like it's just
Yeah.
like such a bizarre, it's so bizarre, but people actually honestly believe it.
Yeah, and then some of these people are in power.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they're voting on legislation that affects each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And yet they believe that it's possible to inject a microchip in a vaccine, you
Right.
know. Meanwhile, they carry their phones around with their location services on because they don't know how to use a phone,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
they're actually being tracked. They don't realize it. And then they make up these conspiracy theories that are impossible, you
Yeah.
know. It's just it's so strange. And no matter how much evidence you show them, it just doesn't matter, which is where the cult mentality comes in,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and they showed a lot more um dedication to Trump than to the Republican Party or anything. You
Hmm.
know,
Absolutely.
they turned on Fox News for for not supposedly not supporting Trump.
They turned on Pence,
Yeah.
you know, Mitt Romney. Like it's just it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
And people who have always been Weasley, but like Ted Cruz has always been a weasel, right?
Hmm.
But to think that he doesn't have the political courage, I guess, to denounce it is just like the election fraud conspiracies, like all of that. I mean, I'm not the person who thinks that because I disagree with somebody that they're stupid,
Right.
right? Like most of my family are Republicans. Like I can see their point of view when it comes to like financial shit to a degree. You know what I mean? But like
Hmm.
it's when these like bizarre alliances and like I don't know, it just I don't understand it. That I can't understand, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it seems like what's happened in this country is we're not just disagreeing anymore. Um, People are just not able to think like critically, or to align themselves with reality. You know.
Right. Right. And I think in part it's because like the things that they have been fed for generations, like the whole like trickle down economics, like it's shown that it does not work, right? It's a
Hmm.
failed economic policy and there's evidence of it. But because they invested so much of like their heart and soul into it, it's like they can't turn around from it. You know, they
Yeah.
just can't accept that failure,
Right.
you know. And it's unfortunate because people suffer because of it,
Yeah.
you know. Like they can't see the economic benefit of having strong social programs that like educating people for free and feeding people and making sure that they're not sleeping on the streets, and treating addiction compassionately, like they don't understand how that can translate into a stronger economic base,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Some reason, even though all the evidence is there to show that it does,
Yeah.
right? It's really sad.
Yeah. It's a very, it's just like an attitude, and it's like a straight from the gut kind of feeling. Like take care of yourself. No one's gonna do it for you. That kind of thing. Those
Yeah.
kind of like attitudes and platitudes are not very well. I mean, none of it's well thought out. These people have been interviewed, and no one could articulate like what was going on. You know, why they were there.
Right.
Um, some of them seemed like they were uh, in an improv troupe. I mean, the woman who said she was there for Revolution,
Yeah.
I I thought she was so hilarious that she couldn't have been real.
Right. Right.
Like she
Well, and
just didn't have.
see, that's the thing, Mike, is that like you and I who have actually been involved in politics on the local level, the grassroots level, who actually call ourselves activists,
Hmm.
right? Who've participated in certain things, whether they be direct action or more of like a like nonviolent protest or whatever it might be. We know, right, that you can't do interviews on TV if you're breaking the law,
Yeah.
right? You can't like tag yourself in a photo. Like I was telling some of my friends, I used to do stuff with Earth First, and nobody knows my real name,
Right.
right? Like, and it was a lot more anonymous because it was the 90s,
Hmm.
but still, there's parts of the country where people don't know, they know me as somebody else.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? Because there was
Yeah.
always that protection because you knew what you were doing was illegal. It wasn't
Right.
necessarily wrong, but it was illegal.
Hmm.
And you have to protect yourself. And the fact that they actually thought that Donald Trump was going to pardon them,
Yeah.
that like,
Well, see, that's funny. I thought you were going somewhere else. I thought you were going to say, like, if you weren't higher up in the movement or if you weren't hired for press, you don't speak to the press because you don't want to say something stupid or something that doesn't align with the
there's
message. But
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's that too.
they're like well beyond that. They're like
Right.
well beyond that.
Well, and I think that like the environmental movement, like those people were much better organized. I mean, you had your outliers, right? Of course.
Hmm.
Like you had like the monkey wrenchers and like the tree sitters, and like I have no issue with them, right?
Yeah,
Like I'm not, that's their thing.
yeah,
But like they were not making statements to the press,
right, right.
right? They
Absolutely
had their
not.
tagline and they had the person that you should talk to,
Right.
and there was the contact person. So it was just like so much better organized and
Hmm.
thought out, really,
Yeah.
which is a shame because imagine if the environmental movement was as strong now as it was 30 years ago
Hmm.
with the technology and the ability to communicate that we have now,
Right.
right? It would be so much different.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like wearing your work ID, like it's just so stupid. And then
Yeah.
being surprised and like putting their shit on Facebook or on social media and then being surprised when they get fired from their job or when the FBI do show up at their house, like they're surprised by it. And it's like, how can you be surprised when
Yeah,
like,
it's as if some of these folks don't know the magnitude of what they were doing. They think they were just like going to some march, and like they think the word revolution is just like a word that you use,
right,
like it's very weird. It's
it
very
is.
odd.
I mean, to cry because you got maced, right? Like that was the girl. She was like, I just
Yeah,
got maced. I wanted
yeah,
to start a revolution. And it's like, people were tortured during the
Yeah.
revolution. Like you got
Yeah.
maced. Like calm down. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like they were tortured during revolutions. This
Yeah.
is not the same thing, you know.
I'm reading this book now called A History of African American and Latinx. Um, no, I think it's called An African American and Latinx History of the United States by Paul Ortiz. And I'm kind of just towards the beginning of the book, and it's got like all these writings of like uh, black folks who were challenging the forefathers for being such hypocrites, for like
Mm.
using language about like freedom and all this stuff from, you know, England while they all like held slaves and stuff. And it's interesting because, you know, I knew that people felt that, but I didn't realize like the amount of writing that took place like back then, while it was happening,
At the
including
time.
some pretty young people, including like a 23-year-old person. Um, it's pretty interesting to see like even how people felt like back then. I guess a lot of people in the world like were not blind to the hypocrisy back then.
Hmm. There
But
would
I
be,
guess they wouldn't even think of like giving up slaves.
well, and I mean, it's so right. And when you think of the legal limitations that those people had, you know, like no access to education, it was illegal and punishable by death to be literate,
Yeah,
you know, and that they still had the wherewithal to make those connections.
yeah,
But I mean, it's just like a matter of self-worth, right? Like they knew in their hearts that they were worth the same, like that everybody is worth the same,
right,
you know. So it's just kind of common sense,
yeah,
you know. So, but the fact that they were so eloquent, that so many people were so eloquent, you know, when it was, you know, done under the, you know, in darkness, like their
right,
learning and their education and like even like just discourse, like you couldn't even have a conversation,
yeah,
right? You couldn't
yeah,
have an intelligent conversation because you would be severely punished,
right,
maybe murdered,
yeah,
right? So to even develop those thoughts is pretty amazing,
yeah.
you know.
And I guess it was a big subject of Thomas Paine as well.
Yes, I read that actually, that he had a lot of issues with the slave owners, and you know, like how can you say that you're fighting for freedom when you own human beings,
Yeah.
like, you know. Did you see the Good Lord Bird on Showtime?
Yeah, was that the one with Ethan Hawke?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was good.
it
That was
was
good.
good.
Um, you know, I was wondering about the depiction of, was it Frederick Douglass?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was wondering about the depiction of Frederick Douglass because it kind of seemed like a very like frivolous kind of character, you
Yeah.
know? What did you think about that?
Well, I was interested because they made him almost like foppish. And then I wanted to know, like, was he really having an affair with this German person?
Right.
And you know, rumor was that he did, you
Yeah.
know, in front of his wife. Um so yeah, I mean, could be, but he is such a powerful, or he was such a powerful speaker and a powerful thinker that I kind of understood, I guess, why they portrayed him as so highbrow, because I
Mhm.
guess it was a way to like for him to set himself not above, but set himself as different from uneducated Black people.
Yeah, it
So
was like so those folks in the north would kind of like be attracted to
basically,
what he was selling.
yeah, exactly. Like I
Hmm.
think that he, and I don't know, obviously, because I don't really know that much about him in general,
Yeah,
but I think that if that were the case, if he were like that, it would be to like sell himself to the white abolitionists,
yeah,
as a well-dressed, well-spoken Black person, like the ideal of what that could be.
right. Yeah, I'd be more interested in finding out. I mean, my instincts tell me that even if that were the case, they like turned up the exaggeration like way up to just like show a contrast, between uh, Bird and what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if like because like they made John Brown like so rugged and like you know what I mean? Like they really like was the whole movie about caricature,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
yeah, or the whole show was about
Yeah.
caricature. But I didn't know that about John Brown. Like I knew about Harper's Ferry because I grew up in PA and I've been to Harper's Ferry
Okay.
um, because it's so close to where I grew up to Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
So I knew that there was a slave insurrection, but I did not know that John Brown kind of traveled across the country for that purpose.
Right.
I didn't realize that he was in Kansas and, I didn't realize that whole history, that backstory of it.
Yeah.
And was that true? Like, did he take that person? What was his name? The
The
kid?
boy.
Yeah. Was that like based on truth or was that just the story, like a method of storytelling?
I don't know. I'd have to look into it. That's
Yeah.
that's a good question. Yeah.
If it was just like a vehicle.
Right.
But I thought it was really good,
Yeah.
you know. Hmm. It's so interesting, isn't it? Just how like we keep having cycles of the same thing in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Well, I mean, speaking of which, Biden's had some pretty ambitious, um, goals for his like first few days in office, and like he's kind of like been pushing a lot right out of the gate. You
Yeah.
know, like I wonder how much he'll be able to get done.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that he had all of those executive orders just like stacked up on his desk,
Yeah.
like basically undoing every executive order that Trump had signed.
Right.
I thought
Yeah.
that was really funny. Actually, they had a photograph of him and there were like 20
Mhm.
executive orders and he was just signing away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess you got to go big at this point.
Yeah, really.
Got to do as
Well,
much
I mean,
damage
and
as you
he's
can.
gone big. Like his cabinet is so full of minorities,
Mm.
right? You have like a Native American as the Secretary of Department of Interior, which is amazing, which is how
Uh-huh.
it should be,
Right.
right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because, somebody has to represent their interests.
Right.
And that's the department that handles like the reservations and Indian affairs and stuff. So,
Right.
like, it makes sense.
Sure.
So, but I mean, just across the board, like I think that there's a transgendered woman is in charge of the COVID response now,
Okay.
a physician from Pennsylvania. It's just pretty amazing,
Yeah.
you know, how many people of color and how many women are on his cabinet.
Right. Well, yeah. I hope they can get a lot done, and I hope they get another 4 years to do it.
Yeah, me too.
Um, I just don't know what happens 8 years from now.
Right. Are we going to have like another ridiculous backlash like we did with Obama?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and Obama, again, we talked about this, was not that progressive with his policies.
Right.
Just his being was
Yeah.
progressive. Right.
Right.
And that's, but his policies were not that progressive.
Right.
Not really, you know. So I know it's a little bit anxiety causing to think about the backlash. But
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
has this country like ever gone for the same party, like, like in recent times? Have they ever like not flip flopped after 8 years?
Um, no. Well, no, not, let's see. Carter was after Ford. Ford was Nixon. Nixon was after Kennedy. Well, Johnson, but Kennedy. Eisenhower was before Kennedy, and he was a Republican. Truman was before Eisenhower, and he was a Democrat. I think it just keeps going back and forth,
Yeah.
But I think that if, like, frankly, I feel that if there's been talk about, getting rid of the Electoral College, I think if that happens, we would see a definite change. I really think that majority of Americans are more progressive than what our actual representation is.
Okay.
You know, like if you look at just the numbers, and not the
Right.
ridiculous Electoral College.
Right.
I think that if they abolished the Electoral College, that they could see even more progressive people, not the same moderate Democrats, but like even more progressive,
Yeah.
you know. I don't know. There's a lot that can be done, really.
Yeah. I guess, we'll have to keep pushing like third party politics and, get some of the disillusioned, voters to see that they have like a place. They have a place in everything.
Yeah.
draw some of the votes out.
And the next 2 years are going to be the best time because that's when, the Democrats will have the majority. Because that's the other thing is that, I mean, there's definitely a pattern, right? And you can almost predict that in 2 years at the midterm elections, that the House is going to go Republican and the Senate might go Republican, during the midterm elections.
Right.
It's like an ongoing pattern, you know,
Yeah.
it really is. There's no surprises anymore, which I
Right.
think is kind of like a failure of our system, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the level of organizing it would take to convince people to stay the course for another 4 to 8 years, so we can actually build on what we've been able to accomplish would 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 take a lot. People, there would have to be some trust and some motivation there, and just a great level of organizing to convince people to like play the long game instead of just thinking short term.
Right, exactly. To be actionary instead of reactionary,
Yeah.
right? I know. But I mean, it takes so much energy. Like what Stacey Abrams did in Georgia was amazing,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
how hard she must have worked for that.
Hmm.
Like that level of just, like that level of um just of energy, like it's how do you keep that up? Like how can she, and she shouldn't be expected to, right? Like
Right.
people should follow her lead and use her as an example, but we can't depend on her to do that again. I mean, imagine. I mean, she's a human being with a family,
Yeah.
right? Like, you must have put in 16-hour days
Right.
just to make sure that that happened. And you can't expect one person to do that.
Yeah.
Like, someone really has to take over.
Well, there's got to be plenty of people that are ready to continue like building on what they've been able to accomplish down there, and then make some kind of example of what they've done until they can like keep duplicating it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And really, like, the Democrats need a unifying, like, issue, you know,
Right.
just like the Republicans have abortion. They
Right.
need, the Democrats need something to unify them, whether that be universal health care, universal education.
Hmm.
There has to be like some strong issue that they can unify behind,
Right. Right.
you know. 'Cause my in-laws, for instance, it doesn't matter what the candidate says, as long as they state that they are pro-life, they will
Right.
get their vote,
Right.
right? Nothing
Yep.
else matters. Nothing else matters. Literally nothing else matters. I
Yeah.
asked them, how could you vote for this person knowing that they're pro-death penalty and you're anti-death penalty, or
Hmm.
that they're, you know, pro-war, like they vote over and over to engage in conflict and military conflict, and you're a pacifist,
Right.
but their main thing is pro-life.
Right.
That's the only issue they vote on. And if the Democrats had something like that, you know,
Yeah.
that they could really just market as their own,
Right.
because that's what the Republicans did, right? They just marketed to make people anti-choice,
Right.
you know, propaganda, using the churches. It's just, that's how they did it.
Right.
People will say that they're pro life, but then you ask them specifics and they're like, oh no, I think that that should be okay.
Right.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
but they were sold that this is what pro life means. So they, you know, ripping fetuses' arms off and shit. Everybody's against that.
Right.
Nobody wants that to happen.
Right.
Right. That should absolutely be illegal. And nobody
Yeah.
does it. It doesn't happen.
Right.
Right. Like, but they somehow convinced people that it does happen somehow, and that's what they latched onto, is that horror, even though it's not real,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. One issue that Democrats could stand behind. I mean, I feel like it should be like housing, you know, one
I think
form or
housing would be,
another.
yeah, something. I mean, I think that if they could somehow actually all agree on Medicare for all,
Hmm.
and again, look at the evidence that it works and it drives costs down,
Right.
and that, if there's no impediment to care, I think that that would be an excellent unifying
Hmm.
issue, because
Yeah.
everybody is affected by healthcare,
Right.
even if you have insurance, and if they were to even like broaden the argument, I, for instance, might not work full time if I had state sponsored health insurance, right? How many people work for benefits that otherwise wouldn't work full time? And
Right.
then when that happens, you drive down unemployment, right? Like, if I didn't have a full-time job, that gives somebody else the option to have a job, like to work part-time,
Hmm.
right? So you're opening up the job market that way. I don't know. It just, There's so many different ways to look at it,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, definitely Medicare for all, which I've been told is technically like Medicaid for all, but I think Medicare sounds better, so they use that term.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they could start fighting for like free housing for all, like if you could tell all your voters, like if you vote for me, you'll never have to pay rent again. If you could actually get that done, you could get a shit ton of votes.
Yeah. Or at least get like some kind of tax credit if you choose to upgrade your living accommodations,
Hmm.
right? So like if you choose to buy a home rather than live in, you know, whatever, state housing,
Yeah.
then you still get that tax credit
Right.
of like 15,000 a year or whatever it might be that,
Sure.
that they allocate to it,
Yeah.
you know. And it should be based per person, like not per household, but per person in your household.
Right.
Because the bigger your household, the more housing you need.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Whoops, I lost you again. Sorry. 1 second. I'm going to see if I can X out of something. It says my connection's unstable.
Mm.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. But yeah, I mean, that would, because you have to have something that like everybody would feel that they benefit from, or like the
Right.
majority of people feel that they would benefit from,
Yeah.
because that really is what sells people stuff,
Sure.
right? Like, not everybody is altruistic and
Right.
believes that housing is a basic human right for whatever for whatever reason. Not everybody believes that,
Sure.
even though they go to church every Sunday.
Right.
But yeah, so it would have to be something that like benefits every person. But
Hmm.
that's an excellent way of doing it, you
Yeah.
know. Give the tax credit. Like, there's a way to use the current system that we have to make it benefit the populace,
Hmm.
right? If it was actually used the right way,
Right.
you know. But it's not, unfortunately.
Well, speaking of benefits, hopefully I'll be taking a sabbatical soon, like very soon. But I kind of like was trying to hold off until I could actually go somewhere, but now I'm just like fuck it. Like I'm tired of like playing this waiting game. I'll still have like if things open up, I'll still have my regular vacation or at least most of it. So I think that'll be the way I play it is take the sabbatical first and then try to save my vacation for if things are like semi back to normal
Yeah.
sometime later this year.
What are you doing? I know that you're working for the working families. Is that what you're talking about taking a sabbatical from?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. How would you do that? You just take the time off, or
Yeah. Hmm.
good for
Yeah.
you.
Just take the time off. Yeah. I mean, initially I was thinking of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, but now I'm just like, I'll just take it.
Take a mental health sabbatical.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm doing in April. Like, hopefully I'm fully vaccinated, so I
Okay.
feel comfortable traveling personally.
Okay. Okay.
I don't really know how contagious I can still be,
Right.
right? So I don't know. And obviously I would still wear a mask everywhere I go,
Right.
right? Just for the other people's peace of mind, so I don't freak anybody out really.
Yeah. What is the deal on vaccinations? Um, they're still not like fully effective until we have like a herd immunity. Is that like how it works, or until
I
most
think
people
so.
have been vaccinated for a while.
Yeah, you need 70% of the population to have herd immunity.
Hmm.
Right now, I think we're at 4%. So
Okay.
I personally think it would take years for things to get back to normal, where you don't have to like wear a mask, there's no restrictions, that kind
Hmm.
of thing. But I honestly, I'm not 100% sure. But I think what happens is that, you're exposed to the virus and you're exposed to it, it still lives in your body, but your body is able to kill it before it makes you sick. But you're still shedding the virus,
Hmm.
right? So if you're exposed to it, you're still giving it off. You're still contagious. So,
Okay.
yeah. So then it's like, but how contagious are you? I don't know.
Right.
Like,
So you're saying
if
the vaccine might help you more than it might help other people around you if you've been exposed to it.
that's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Because you're still like, even with like the measles, right? Like if you and I who are vaccinated come into contact with someone in the measles with the measles, it's not like the measles just like stops in front of us, right?
Hmm.
It still enters our body, it tries to reproduce, but our immune system kills it before it can do that. But
Okay.
we're still giving it off. So then
Right.
if you encounter someone who's not vaccinated, hypothetically they could still catch the measles from you.
Right.
But what I don't know, and there's different viral loads. So if you just have like, and these are all made up numbers, right? So don't take this as fact.
Sure.
But like say your viral load is 2, you're not as contagious as if your viral load were 50,
Okay.
right? So like the level of exposure, not just exposure, but like the level of the person who's exposing you, like how much of the virus they are exposing you to matters as well.
Mm.
So there's that. So
Yeah.
like I work in the hospital and so I'm exposed to COVID, but the levels that I've been exposed to have not been high enough to give me COVID, right?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
we've all been exposed to it, but at such low levels that it doesn't have the ability to replicate fast enough to make us sick. And that's
Hmm.
really what the vaccine does, is that it primes your body to immediately respond to the exposure
Okay.
rather than waiting until you actually have issues, you know.
Right.
But but yeah, like 70% is a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's what herd immunity is. And people are still reticent to get the vaccine for some reason, you know.
Yeah.
I work with people who are nurses that will not get it. And I don't understand why,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. My mom had it recently, and then my dad also had some symptoms, but I think he didn't want to get tested. They were okay. I think they had a mild version of it, but there was still like the reluctance to get tested.
Right. And it's like, why not? You know, like why wouldn't I mean, I understand that I do understand because like our urgent cares, it's just like there's literally people waiting in the street to get tested,
Mm.
you know. So I understand it takes hours to
Right.
go to urgent care to get tested.
Yeah.
So I can understand people not wanting to get tested, but I don't understand if you have the privilege of getting the vaccine and
For sure.
you don't get it. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, they should at least like let someone go in your place or something.
Right. Like give you, her slot. Like the person I work with that refuses to get it. Like
Yeah.
give her voucher to you,
Right.
right? Or give her voucher to her mother who's 80 and hasn't left the house since last February.
Right.
You know, I don't know. The whole thing is just a mess. And then you have people who are protesting vaccination sites, which doesn't make any sense to me. You have people like intentionally destroying the vaccines, like mishandling the shipments so that they
I
are
hadn't heard of
destroyed.
that. I hadn't
I
heard of that.
mean, that's out of
That's
control.
wild.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And like I can't believe that people aren't being charged with like crimes for that. There
Yeah.
has to be like something that they can be charged with.
Yeah. Seriously.
Hmm.
Yeah. People should be like forced to like go to school or like learn, like not even go to school, but like get educated on this stuff. Like take take online courses since people like getting all their information online.
Yeah, exactly. It could just be a series of memes.
Yeah, they should. They should. YouTube should like partner with the Department of Education. They could like form some educational materials strictly for YouTube.
There's one country, it's somewhere in Asia, that if you violated the mask mandate, your punishment was to dig graves.
Wow,
Yeah,
I like that. That's good.
I do. I kind of do too. Like that was their punishment, was to, like, that was you know, their sentence.
Do they get to wear a mask when they dig the
Mhm.
graves?
I don't know. But I mean, I would offer them the mask, wear it if you want to. Like, like, what do you think now? Do you believe in it now?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Um, should try to see if like we can pass legislation on that.
Hmm. Or people that go to these ridiculous house parties with like 150 people.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The super spreader
Yeah.
events.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's apparently really how it spreads,
Right.
are these super spreader events, like the rallies, the concerts,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, like in May, Mike and I we did a march, a Black Lives Matters march,
Hmm.
and there were maybe 150 people there. And it was, again, so incredibly organized. There was hand sanitizer everywhere. They were giving out free masks. I
Hmm.
mean, it was just, they were really promoting, they were promoting good hygiene skills, basically.
Yeah.
And, 150 people that we didn't know, and we were not 6 feet away from them, and we didn't get sick,
Hmm.
you know? And it's just like, if you follow the rules, you'll be fine. It's when you
Right.
break the rules that, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible how that works. That a lot of people were not getting sick during a lot of these protests that were happening.
yeah. Yeah, it was actually kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It was almost like karma.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Seriously.
Yeah. Like something was watching out, something, someone, whatever was watching out for them.
Right.
Yeah, I know. And again, talk about like how well organized things are. Like at the beginning of that rally, at the beginning of that march, there was a leader, right? Like a head organizer, and she, gave out the rules. Like if you're white and the press, come to you, just kind of defer them to a person of color. If you're not like familiar with any of us, like you can see who we are because we're like wearing these special t-shirts or whatever.
Hmm.
And it really was like so well organized, you know,
Yeah.
like the message was really well controlled.
So, what's your Are you do you have availability like in the next few days or like
Let me
up
look.
through Saturday or anything?
I'm working Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So those are out. Um, Next week I can do Friday.
Next week, Friday.
Yeah, the
Uh,
12th.
okay. At what time? The same
Same.
time, 6.
Yeah, if that works for you.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
think that should work. Let me check my calendar.
And then I will watch that movie
Cool.
and we can talk about it. It's on my queue. So
Okay.
I have it bookmarked, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Perfect.
So Friday is the 12th. We're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Well, cool, Mike.
Yeah. Good hanging. I was very tired today, so sorry that the energy wasn't was not what it could have been. It was just one
No,
of
that's
those
okay.
days.
Are you kind of feeling sick a little bit?
No, I don't know. My schedule's just kind of been weird. I've just like, I just like take naps whenever I feel like it, and sometimes I get energy at weird times.
I feel that.
Yeah,
I definitely feel that.
yeah.
All right, cool. So I will see you next Friday.
Okay. All right. See you next Friday. Good
All
talking to
right.
you.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.